I'm very pleased to have on my magical thing John Constable, aka John Crow, who I know as a playwright, writer, performer, actor, poet, and um, one of the pivotal figures behind the remarkable story of the Crossbones Graveyard, the graveyard for the excluded and outcast dead in South London. John, it's really, really lovely to have you on my magical thing. I never know whether to call you John Crow or John Constable. I know that John Crow is your shamanic persona, let's call it. So it's good to have you, both of you, here.
Yeah, I think John Constable is the name I was given, and John Crow is the name that took me, you could say. So today I'll be John Crow to talk about my John Crow coat, which is my magical object.
Show us your magical thing.
I'm wearing here. I'll get up and give you a twirl in a minute. But so, yes, John Crow I'd used as a literary persona, a shamanic alter ego in experimental writing in the especially in the 1990s. And it was the 23rd November 1996, I really pushed the boat out, and John Crow made contact with the goose, who's become my spirit guide for the last 23 years. And the goose is the spirit of a medieval sex worker who worked in brothels licensed by the church by the Bishop of Winchester, but was allegedly buried in unconsecrated ground and forgotten until the Jubilee line dug up Crossbones to build the extension. So that's the short version of all that. And so when I got the goose, it was really like she made clear her business was with John Crow. And so this, what had been a playful persona, from the moment the goose appeared, started to emerge as a kind of autonomous entity. John Crow took on a life of his own. And so then all this came through in the Southwark Mysteries, the work that was written, inspired by the goose. And it stands in itself as prophetic books, but it also seemed to include for me encoded orders, instructions for a whole praxis, a way of honouring the goose and the spirits of Crossbones. And it seemed that this was John Crow's business. And so I didn't really have, he didn't really have a costume or a uniform or anything associated with John Crow. What I had was, soon after I had the goose vision, I went to Bali and I got this amazing ikat scarf that seemed to have homunculi woven into it. And I wore that for the first couple of years of doing the work. I found it very intense and heavy. And then I went to Earth Spirit, the festival, and it went sneaking off into the mud. We'll maybe come back to that, about what happens when you lose a power object and how you deal with it. But anyway, so by the time we did the Southwark Mysteries in Shakespeare's Globe, and that was on the 23rd of April 2000, and I played John Crow, who appears in it alongside Jesus and Satan and the goose and a host of characters. So playing my persona, I needed definitely a crow coat, and it was Annie Kelly, the theatre designer, who made me this. So I'll just give you a quick twirl, Julian, here, because she's got this lovely spin to it, you see this. And now the thing about why I've chosen this as the magical object is because it kind of amplifies what I do when I take on John Crow, or when John Crow takes on me. And that is effectively, John Constable really needs to get out the way. Mm-hmm. So the night that I had the goose vision, John Constable was the scribe, and the actual dance, or the song and dance routine, was happening between the goose and John Crow, and I was like the third party, the observer. And so whenever I do John Crow works, and as I say, it began with this performance in Shakespeare's Globe, but since then I've worn this coat at many sacred sites: Stonehenge, Avebury, Snowdonia. I also have worn it at festivals: Glastonbury, Big Green, Buddhafield, Earth Spirit, many festivals, and at parties like the Synergy parties held under London Bridge. So this coat has been with me in all of these things, but most of all in the works at Crossbones, beginning with the Halloween of Crossbones, which we did for a magical cycle of 13 years every Samhain. And then out of that grew the vigils, which we've conducted on the 23rd of every month since June 2004. So we're into the 192nd consecutive vigil. And I've always conducted the vigils in my John Crow persona. And so this is the thing, as John Constable, of course, I'm as much a mess as anyone else. And there are days on the 23rd, shortly before the vigil, where I would sometimes feel, I'm such a mess. I'm just not worthy to do this. And I'd be walking up to Crossbones. And luckily the goose had a knack of intervening as I walked up Red Cross Way towards the gates and reminding me, no, you don't have to do anything. You're nothing. Just be John Crow and serve the goose, and the goose will do it. And it's never let me down, this practice. And so the coat is a way of amplifying that sense. So when I put the coat on, it's a kind of it's a prompt to me, a prompt and a prop, if you like, to get out of the way.
That's a prompt and a prop and a prayer and an amazing magical thing. John Constable, John Crow, thank you so much for showing us your magical thing, your marvelous magical coat.
Can I tell you one more thing?
Go on, tell us.
Go on, just for fun.
Tell us.
Well, it concerns you, because you've done workshops up in Snowdonia, and there was one you couldn't do. So I actually stepped in for you, and I did my Opening the Pathways workshop. And just before I went in, one of the participants came up to me, lovely woman who's become a good friend, said, can I give it a stroke? And you don't refuse an offer like that. But then I said, well, I don't want teachers' pets. So then I went into the room and told everybody she'd just stroked my coat and that they were all welcome to do the same. So I then passed around the room and everybody stroked my coat. And, you know, seen from outside by an unsympathetic voice, that would be an act of messianic egotism. But actually, it totally relaxed me for the workshop and all of them. And that sort of playfulness, which I know you also like to bring into your work, I think it's very important for magical practitioners not to get obsessed, especially with our magical objects. When I lost my scarf in Earth Spirit, for a while I thought, my God, somebody's got hold of it. They're doing black magic on me. Ultimately, it made me much stronger as a practitioner not to have that total reliance. So if I ever lose my coat, I hope John Crow will dance on.
We'll find you another one of that, I'm certain. John Constable, John Crow, thank you for sharing your magical thing. Really appreciate it, John. Lovely to see you, man. Lovely to see you.
You too.
Loads of love.
Bless you, Julian. Goose be with you. Open pathways.
Likewise, brother.